Hey guys, Art17 here, and we're in week 10 now, moving right along. End of the term is week 16, so it should be a makeup week, and also producing your final, which I may ask for earlier. I'm going to try to get an online gallery at the college going, but I'm not sure about that, but I'll let you know early on. Anyway, week 10. Talking about assignment 18, which is ink techniques. Now, you're going to need like a Sharpie type of pen, not really small or thin dots or marks, but somewhere in the middle, and certainly not real thick, like a felt tip marker would be more thick. This is a marker that you use for ink drawing, typically like an 08 size. If it says a size on it, 08, you can tell by the marks it's making if they're really too small or way too thick. Somewhere in the middle, and I'll show you examples so you can sort of govern that when you get your pen. But probably only need one pen because we're going to do ink techniques to show your understanding of how to shade with ink marks, which is totally different mark making than with graphite or charcoal. And then we're going to have an ink drawing after that this week. So that'll be number 19 for the ink drawing. And number 18 would be the techniques. All right, so I'm going to show you some examples of techniques. These right here are showing the mark making. They're actually showing a lot of the light area, probably too much. I think this is more of what I'm asking for here. I hate that when it does that. Leaving a little less of the light area. This is like really saturated with the very light area, which is totally white. But it does show you the ink marks. Typically, there's better examples actually. Let me see if I can find those, because those, they're okay. This is a good example of scribbling mark. Well, basically, it's just scribbling around and leaving where the light source is hitting on the top of this ball. It's very light, so you don't make very many marks there, if any. Then you start introducing the marks slowly, and more marks together, more congested as you go around into the darker area in the dark shadow side of the ball. The light side has less marks, so less marks shows more light, and more marks shows less light, and then you get a shape to the ball with those marks. Okay, that's the whole thing about it. So scribbling is one way to do it. They call this linear hatching. Well, basically you're going straight across one way or the other with your marks. And these are like sporadic lines that connect and don't connect, and they're not completely straight across the whole ball. They start and stop and start and stop. And you put more back here than in the front and on the top where the light is shining on, catching on the ball. These are the less marks, a little more marks here for the midtones, and then a lot of marks for the darker side and the cast shadow. This is stippling, which is just little dots. You're making little dots with your pen. Very congested and close together here where it's darker. Then they get less and less close together and less congested, less marks, as you want the lighter side to show up. So that's how you're showing the shape of the ball, or anything round, or anything in a cube as well. I mean, you can look at these as well. the cubes have an edge, but they're defined by the marks rather than making a line. And this is showing how dark you can get with marks, various different marks. But I want you to just focus in on balls. So do, I'd say 4 to 5, no, not less. 4 to 5 different balls, or you can use whatever subject you want. Shells, fish that are all the same fish shape, and then you shade in with your marks, or some other subject, but make them all the same so we can see how the marks worked on each image being the same, but the marks are different. So this is cross-hatching here. Kind of did it with a computer or something because it looks really weird, but you can see how there's more marks here crossing each other, right? And then less marks here crossing each other, showing the lighter area. Then the mid-tone area, a little more marks, but not as much as back here where it's really dark. And the cast shadow too. You want the cast shadow on the table so that they're not just floating in the air, okay? So I'm going to show you some other, here's some eggs. So this is scribbling. This would be more of your cross-hatching here. It's kind of going with the contour shape of the egg though, like this one. This is kind of contour shading. All these marks are slightly different. Stippling, scribbling, cross-hatching, hatching, or linear, I think this is more linear. This is more your contour. These, like this shape, this shape, this shape, are all going, and even these two are sort of going in the direction of the shape of the egg. So you're showing a rounded surface there with your mark, kind of rounding off and coming down, rounding off and coming down. More marks in the middle than the far side because this is showing that reflection off the table area that we talked about in other graphite shading videos. It showed a lighter area here. And that shows really how round the egg is. When you have a lighter area under here that meets up with your cast shadow, and so they're separate because one's lighter than the other. And so this is showing reflective light coming off the table. Not so much here. This is the darker area right in the middle. And then it starts getting lighter and lighter as it gets up to the lightest area. This is going to show the shape of your egg or your ball or whatever rounded surface you're working with that you're going to draw with a pen drawing of a subject. It's going to typically probably have rounded surfaces on it or other surfaces that are like a cube that you're going to work with. I showed you that example. And also there's, plenty of ways to make the marks that show texture as well. So you can look at all these and practice them, but whenever you're showing a rounded surface or something in a cube that's catching light on one side and not on the other, you're going to be using this sort of technique where you're showing very light area with less marks or no marks. Then you start having a little bit of marks showing the light area getting darker, and it gets dark, 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 and darkest on the other side. So here's more of your cross-hatching idea with that. So you're crossing over lines. These are basically working with the contour shape of the ball as well a little bit. Oops. And I think I showed these, didn't I? Those are pretty good. Why does it do that? Show me that. Okay. It's kind of cross-hatching. This looks flat to me. It's not working as well as working with the contour shape of the ball. It is showing a light source. but it is kind of flat because of the lines are straight. The stippling really shows the shape of the ball. So does the scribbling, and I believe the linear hatching works pretty well as well. So those are good to use. Here's a good way to do it too. These are all sort of hatching marks that are working with their background too. So you can see how this works. Darker area meeting the lighter area meeting the dark area, light meeting dark, dark meeting middle tones, but still there's a separation in there. So you have to practice this with your techniques. Practice the techniques and do, 4 to 5 different ball shape or egg shape or something else like that. Scribbling, stippling, cross-hatching, contour lines is what I'm talking about here, that go with the shape of the ball or the egg. Smudging is a different one. That's going to be a little hard to do because we're not using that technique. If you wanted to use an ink wash, then you're using actual ink out of a well and water to make it lighter and darker. But we're not working on that with this. So stippling, scribbling, cross-hatching, those would be 3 right there. And then the contour line one would be another one. Or the linear line, which I think the contour line works better. And then you're going to, draw a drawing showing the shapes, using these marks to show a shape, like these shells. They have rounded surfaces, so there's parts that are darker than lighter that make the shell have a shape. Now we'll discuss this in the next video too, about your drawing, but right now I just want you to focus in on the actual shading of a rounded surface using one of these several of these techniques. The eggs are pretty good. You could use that. But you want to have at least 5 of these, like the scribbling, maybe the contour, the stippling, and the cross-hatching idea. One of these, even contour, or these kind of little lines that kind of meet up with each other. Here's what they're doing here. Stippling, scribbling. They're showing you the marks. Now you put them into light and dark areas by using more of them or less of them to show the shape of the ball with your light source. The light's shining up here, not so much here, and then you have your reflective light coming off the table onto the bottom of the egg. And then, of course, you have your cast shadow, which may be one of the darkest areas, but it's not totally dark. There are some little light areas in there. Okay? So you can look at these anytime you want. Just put ink techniques and it'll show you many different ways to do this. But I would rather you work with rounded surfaces right now because that's a little harder to accomplish than the cube. The cube is like one side's all the same and then one's a little lighter and one side's a little lighter than that, as opposed to doing a round surface is kind of combining all that to make the round surface appear. Alright, so that's enough on this right now, I think. Any questions, let me know. I'll give more suggestions, more examples, and we'll go from there. Thank you.